Airbnb regulations reshape New York City rental market. The impact. New York City has decided to postpone the enforcement of a municipal law that Airbnb claims would severely limit the number of hosts allowed to offer short-term rentals. Airbnb filed a lawsuit on June 1st, arguing that the law amounted to a de facto ban on such rentals. The law, originally set to take effect on July 1st, requires hosts to be permanent residents of the rented units and mandates registration with the Mayor's Office of Special Enforcement, or OSE, before listing rentals. But before we get into it, don't forget to like and share this video with your friends. Be sure to subscribe to our channel to get notified of the next video from us. Shall we start? Impact of Airbnb regulations on short-term rental hosts in New York City. The implementation of Airbnb regulations in New York City has significantly impacted short-term rental hosts. With the requirement for hosts to be permanent residents of the rented units and the mandate to register with the Mayor's Office of Special Enforcement, hosts are facing stricter compliance measures. The regulations have imposed burdensome responsibilities on hosts, including the need to adhere to zoning regulations, housing laws, and maintenance codes. This has increased the complexity and costs associated with operating short-term rentals in the city. Additionally, the regulations have limited the number of hosts allowed to offer short-term rentals, potentially reducing the income opportunities for individuals relying on Airbnb as a source of supplemental or primary income. Hosts now face the challenge of meeting the stringent criteria set forth by the regulations, which may decrease the availability of short-term rental options for tourists and visitors. Legal challenges and lawsuits surrounding Airbnb regulations in New York City. Implementing Airbnb regulations in New York City has faced legal challenges and lawsuits. Airbnb filed a lawsuit on June 1st, claiming the regulations amounted to a de facto ban on short-term rentals. The company argued that the regulations impose burdensome compliance requirements, such as adhering to zoning regulations, housing laws, and maintenance codes. The legal challenges revolve around the contention that the regulations hinder hosts' ability to conduct business effectively and restrict the availability of short-term rental options for visitors. These lawsuits seek to challenge the constitutionality and legality of the regulations, aiming to protect the interests of hosts and the broader sharing economy. The outcomes of these legal battles will have significant implications for the future of Airbnb and short-term rentals in New York City. They will determine the balance between regulating the industry and preserving the economic opportunities it offers. It remains to be seen how the courts will rule on these cases and whether any amendments or modifications will be made to the existing regulations in response to the legal challenges. Requirements for hosts under the new Airbnb regulations in New York City. Hosts are subject to specific requirements under the new Airbnb regulations in New York City. These regulations aim to regulate the short-term rental industry and ensure compliance with various laws and regulations. Here are the key requirements for hosts. Number 1. Permanent residency. Hosts must be permanent occupants of the units they are renting out. This means that hosts cannot solely use their properties for short-term rentals and must maintain their primary residence in the unit. Number 2. Registration. Hosts must register with the Mayor's Office of Special Enforcement before listing their rentals on platforms like Airbnb. This registration process helps the city track and monitor short-term rental activity. Number 3. Zoning compliance. Hosts must comply with zoning regulations to ensure that their rental activity aligns with the designated use of the property. Certain residential areas may have restrictions or limitations on short-term rentals. Number 4. Housing laws and maintenance codes. Hosts are obligated to adhere to housing laws and maintenance codes to ensure the safety and habitability of the rental units. This includes meeting standards for occupancy limits, fire safety, and other relevant regulations. Compliance issues and concerns raised by Airbnb regarding the regulations. Airbnb has raised several compliance issues and concerns regarding the regulations imposed on its platform in New York City. The company argues that these regulations challenge hosts and hinder their ability to operate effectively. Here are the key concerns raised by Airbnb. Number 1. Burdensome requirements. Airbnb claims that the regulations impose burdensome compliance measures on hosts, including adherence to various zoning regulations, housing laws, and maintenance codes. These requirements can be complex and costly, particularly for individual hosts who may lack resources or knowledge of such regulations. Number 2. Limited host opportunities. According to Airbnb, the regulations restrict the number of hosts allowed to offer short-term rentals. This limitation may reduce income opportunities for individuals who rely on Airbnb to supplement their earnings or manage their properties. It also decreases the availability of short-term rental options for visitors. Number 3. Impact on the local economy. Airbnb argues that the regulations can hurt the local economy. By placing restrictions on short-term rentals, the regulations may limit tourism and visitor spending, which can have ripple effects on businesses that benefit from tourism, such as restaurants, shops, and services. The role of the Mayor's Office of Special Enforcement in enforcing Airbnb regulations. The Mayor's Office of Special Enforcement plays a crucial role in enforcing Airbnb regulations in New York City. Tasked with overseeing and monitoring short-term rentals, the OSE ensures compliance with the regulations set forth by the city. Here's an overview of the role of the OSE. Number 1. Registration and monitoring. The OSE is responsible for the registration process of hosts. It manages the registration system, where hosts must register the rental units before listing them on platforms like Airbnb. The OSE monitors and tracks short-term rental activity to ensure hosts comply with the regulations. Number 2. Investigating complaints and violations. The OSE investigates complaints related to short-term rentals and takes action against violations. It has the authority to issue fines and penalties to hosts or booking services found non-compliant with the regulations. The office responds to reports of illegal rentals and takes appropriate enforcement actions. Number 3. Collaboration with other agencies. The OSE works with other city agencies and departments involved in enforcing various laws and regulations related to short-term rentals. This includes coordination with zoning, housing, and building code enforcement agencies to ensure comprehensive compliance. Number 4. Education and outreach. The OSE conducts educational initiatives to inform hosts and the public about the regulations and their obligations. It provides resources and guidance to hosts to help them understand and comply with the rules. Potential effects of the regulations on the local tourism industry. The implementation of Airbnb regulations in New York City can have potential effects on the local tourism industry. These regulations aim to regulate short-term rentals and balance housing availability, community concerns, and economic impacts. Here are the potential effects. Number 1. Reduction in short-term rental options. The regulations may limit the number of available short-term rentals, decreasing options for tourists and visitors. This could potentially lead to a shift towards traditional hotels or alternative accommodations. Number 2. Impact on affordability. The regulations may address concerns about affordable housing by reducing the number of units available for short-term rentals. This, in turn, may help stabilize rental prices in certain neighborhoods, making housing more affordable for local residents. Number 3. Economic implications. The local tourism industry could experience both positive and negative impacts. While the regulations may create challenges for hosts and potentially reduce tourism spending associated with short-term rentals, they may also benefit traditional hotels by redirecting demand towards them. Number 4. Shift in visitor preferences. With fewer short-term rental options, visitors may alter their preferences and opt for the alternative accommodations or explore different neighborhoods within the city. This could lead to a redistribution of tourism activities and spending. Zoning regulations and their connection to Airbnb operations in New York City. Zoning regulations play a significant role in the operations of Airbnb and other short-term rentals in New York City. These regulations dictate the permissible uses of properties in different zones and can impact the legality and scope of short-term rental activities. Here's how zoning regulations connect to Airbnb operations. Number 1. Residential zoning restrictions. Many neighborhoods in New York City are primarily designated for residential use. Zoning regulations may restrict or prohibit short-term rentals in these areas to preserve the character and availability of long-term housing. Number 2. Mixed-use zones. Certain zones allow for mixed-use development, which may permit short-term rentals alongside other commercial or residential activities. However, specific regulations and limitations, such as occupancy caps or licensing requirements, may still apply. Number 3. Commercial zoning opportunities. Short-term rentals may be more permissible in some commercial or tourist-oriented zones. These areas may have specific provisions for accommodations, allowing hosts to operate legally in those designated zones. Number 4. Compliance with zoning laws. Hosts must navigate the zoning regulations to ensure their properties align with the designated use of the area. This includes understanding whether short-term rentals are allowed and any associated requirements or limitations. The implementation of Airbnb regulations has significantly impacted the rental market in New York City. These regulations aim to balance housing availability, community concerns, and the growth of the short-term rental industry. By imposing requirements such as permanent residency for hosts and registration with the Mayor's Office of Special Enforcement, the regulations seek to regulate the market and address affordability and housing availability issues. While the regulations may limit the number of short-term rental options and create compliance challenges for hosts, they also aim to protect the interests of the local residents and stabilize rental prices. What will you surely remember among these information we have for you? Comment down below and share it with us. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. See you next time.